This Nissan GT-R is one in the world, and the reason why is going to shock you. I've never driven something like this. It is absolutely amazing. See, this was built to replicate one of the most famous GT-Rs ever created, a car that drifted at nearly 190 miles per hour. Let me say that again. Nearly 190 miles per hour, sideways.
You have to have a serious amount of gumption to be chucking a car sideways at those sorts of speeds. But somebody looked at that record-breaking machine, watched the footage of it smoking its tyres across the tarmac, and thought, I'd quite like one of those for the road.
Over 2 days I'm taking this road-going version of the Drift world record holder from the forests of Big Bear all the way down to the deserts of Joshua Tree to find out whether or not this is just an outrageous show car or one of the most outrageous GT-Rs going. Good morning everyone and welcome to Big Bear Lake, California. I'm Jack Clancy and this is episode 5 of They Gave Us the Keys. Some of you have got here and the perfect place for this absolute monster. This is one of the wildest GT-Rs I've ever seen, and from the exterior it is an absolute perfect carbon copy of the Drift world record holder. This isn't one of those tribute cars where if you squint you can just about see the resemblance. I mean, everything about this car is a perfect match. The livery, the aero, the stance, it looks like a world record breaker. And even sat next to the lake here, it looks like it's about to be unloaded into the pit lane.
The standard GT-R is already a pretty aggressive looking machine, but this makes an ordinary one look almost restrained. It's wider, lower and a lot louder. It's hilariously dramatic from every single angle. Kinda looks like it's lab grown in a petri dish, if the lab was filled with nitrous oxide, that is.
To understand this car we have to go back to 2016 when Nissan partnered with Japanese drift driver Masato Kawabata. The objective was simple, just drift faster than anyone had before.
Which sounds straightforward, until you realise nobody was attempting to hold a drift at nearly 190 miles per hour, but off they headed to a huge runway in the UAE with a specially prepared GT-R, and they somehow managed to drift it at 189.5 miles an hour. I think that's got to be one of the most ridiculous records in motorsport.
Because unlike a top speed run, you're not just trying to go fast, you're trying to go fast with the car actively trying to go in a different direction at 190 miles an hour. I mean, that's insane! Unlike a lot of tribute cars though, this one has got the hardware to back it up, and it starts with the airflow. Up front, it's got 3.5-inch GOT boost cold air intakes that maximise the volume of air entering the turbos. The air then exits through AMS race down pipes designed specifically to relieve exhaust back pressure. From there, it flows into a 3.5-inch catless mid-pipe and into a free-flowing AMS catback exhaust system.
It's got upgraded Grady intercoolers and upgraded Grady blow-off valves for better boost holding and preventing leaks under higher loads. Plus they sound unreal. Then we get onto the fuel. Because this car can run on E85, which is 85% ethanol, it's basically a performance car cheat code. More boost, more power. The downside is that E85 requires up to 30% more fuel volume than standard petrol to achieve the correct air-to-fuel mixture.
Because the factory fuel system simply couldn't keep up with that demand, everything had to be upgraded. It's running twin drop-in fuel pumps alongside higher flow fuel injectors to keep up with the increased demand. The really clever bit is the Cobb Tuning Flex Fuel Kit, which adds an ethanol sensor. That allows the ECU to automatically adjust timing and fuel maps on the fly based on how much ethanol it senses in the tank.
So you can fill it with normal petrol, full E85 or anything in between, which is exactly what you want if you're actually going to use the thing on the road. The result is 700 horsepower, which translates to roughly 630 horsepower at the wheels. The thing that really gives this car its presence though is the stance. I mean, look at the state of it.
Up front you've got 20 by 11 inch wheels with a pretty aggressive offset. At the rear you've got 20 by 13 inch wheels, which is extremely wide. And you've also got an insanely aggressive offset. I mean, that's actually the biggest offset I've ever seen in the flesh. On top of that, the wheels front and rear are actually completely flushed with the bodywork, which just looks incredibly cool. On the inside, it is just the stock interior with the addition of a retrofitted Apple CarPlay, which is very, very handy. But it is worth mentioning that this car is 700 brake horsepower, and in comparison to other cars that are at that kind of performance level, this is very practical. I mean, that was one of the great things about the Nissan GT-R. Anyway, I mean, you've got 2 passenger seats in the back, not that they would have an enormous amount of legroom, must be said. But there is also quite a large boot. I mean, on this trip, we've brought 3 large suitcases, 2 carry-ons and a rucksack, and we've managed to fit all of it in, some of it in here, some of it in the boot, and that's with some of the boot being taken up by the tank for the air suspension, which I will mention a bit later. So pretty practical. Of course, there is one problem with building a car that looks like it belongs solely on the racetrack, and that is that it has to deal with the real world. But that's where my favourite modification comes in. A Stance Cup air suspension kit built right onto the coilovers. At the press of a button, the car raises itself high enough to deal with anything that might usually terrify the owners of low cars. Then once you're clear, you press it again and it just drops right back down again. Right, enough stat chat. You've done well if you've made it this far into the video. Now let's see what 700 horsepower gets you in the mountains. My God, that is extremely quick. The thing about modified GTRs, or indeed modified cars of any kind, is that the numbers never truly prepare you for the reality. And this is no different. 700 horsepower obviously sounds impressive, but the reality and the experience are just unbelievable. I mean, this thing absolutely flies. And with that extremely stiff race suspension, you feel absolutely everything. However, this is where modified cars can start to show their weaknesses. Mountain roads and, shall we say, vigorous driving. And unfortunately, this one is not immune. The gearbox is pretty clunky and it's best driven in manual mode. Not just because it's obviously more fun and responsive, but because the auto system is kind of all over the place. And then there's the paddle shifting. Sometimes it's really responsive, and then sometimes it takes an absolute age to change gear. On top of that, I had 2 incidents yesterday where the car broke down on me. The first was coming back into Big Bear up the mountainous roads.
No way.
I guess what you would say was some fairly rigorous driving, but not outrageous. And we were coming around a corner and the engine just lost power and then cut out. I think it was an overheating issue because I waited for about 20-25 minutes, and then when I went to start it was actually fine. But I then drove for about 20 minutes normally back into town, went to the supermarket, came out of the supermarket, been in there for half an hour, so actually all the temperature had gone right down. And I was driving totally normally through town, and then all of a sudden the car just went into limp mode, went into first gear, and I couldn't go more than about 5 miles an hour, which very luckily happened literally 50 meters from the entrance to the hotel, so it was fine. The old off and on jobby did the trick. But today we are currently issue free, and my God, it feels good. And listen, you have to expect that there might be some issues when you're talking about a car that is so highly customized and is operating at such high limits of performance. So yeah, there was some panic stations when we were stranded at the side of the road with no phone signal. But here we are today, so who cares? I think the Nissan GTR is a bona fide legend. When it launched, it completely disrupted the supercar world. Here was a Nissan capable of embarrassing Porsches and Ferraris that cost 2 or 3 times the price, and it was embarrassing them on the road, on the track, everywhere. It is absolutely amazing. This has got to be up there with one of the best days of my life. I can't believe I get to do this kind of thing. I had an interesting thought experiment the other day because I was going on and on to my fiance about how much I was enjoying driving that Corvette, and she asked me what my favourite car that I've driven so far is, and I said, well, you can't really answer that question. And she was like, no, but if you had to choose one, what would you choose? And actually I just maintained the fact that you can't really answer that question, because I wouldn't want to drive this particularly in LA. I mean, obviously I wouldn't say no, but if I was given the choice of having something else, you know, that 59 Chevy Corvette was so much better suited to Los Angeles. And actually, amongst all different cars, it totally depends on what mood you're in, what the weather's saying, what time of year it is, where you're going. All of these different variables kind of dictate, you know, in a perfect world, what car you would choose to be doing that exact thing in. And that's the beauty of cars. There's so many different varieties and they all conjure up totally different emotions. I mean, obviously there's the same childlike wonder and just enjoyment as a baseline, but this is so much more dramatic and more adrenaline than the Corvette in LA, which felt much more stylish and cool and relaxed. What a wonderful thing. Tuners quickly realised that the platform could handle huge power increases on the stock internals, which is why people became obsessed with modifying them, and which is why ultimately a GTR ended up breaking the world record going sideways at 190 miles an hour. I just can't get over that. We aren't breaking any world records today, but we are going to be putting the GTR's grand touring capabilities to the test by completely changing landscapes.
One of my favourite things about the US is just how quickly the scenery can change. I mean, this morning we were surrounded by pine forests at about 7,000 feet, sparkling lakes, lush forests. Fast forward 2 hours and it looks like we're on a completely different planet. Welcome to Joshua Tree. This place is absolutely incredible too. You've got these absolutely mad giant rock formations, these endless horizons, and it is just properly arid. All of that is to say that I think this car actually might look even more ridiculous out here, which is saying something because it looked pretty ridiculous in Big Bear. What's impressed me most about this car isn't necessarily the power, although 700 brake horsepower is obviously absolutely ridiculous, as is the fact that from the outside this thing looks completely identical to the record-breaking car. It's more that despite what it looks like, it actually does work as a road-going car. I mean, sure, you can run this thing on ethanol, but you can also run it on petrol. And when you get to a speed bump, you can just raise it up on the air suspension before lowering it back down into race mode. So despite looking completely outrageous, it's actually been perfectly happy doing what we've been doing with it today. So has this been one of the most insane driving experiences of my life? Absolutely. I need to thank Archie for letting me borrow this absolutely incredible machine, for sharing something that has been so lovingly built. It has been an absolute privilege to drive. I'm Jack Clancy. Thank you very much for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.